Father Martin Mcgowan has been a St. Patrick's priest for 26 years, as at the time of this interview in 2023. He works in Muchenge Parish in Lusaka. In this interview, he tells us about his childhood, his vocation, and his missionary work in Zambia as we mark 50 years of the St. Patrick's Fathers in Zambia.
Yeah, so thanks, Joe. I come from Ireland, from County Limerick, which is the Midwest of Ireland. So I went to school, secondary school, in a Jesuit college called Crescent College Comprehensive. So I did my Leaving Cert. And after my Leaving Cert, I decided to go to a third level college called the University of Limerick. Now, it was a 4-year course, an engineering course. So I went to that course, I did my engineering, and I qualified, and I got a degree in engineering from that college. But I decided that I would become a priest the day I graduated. So it was a strange, I think the classmates were a bit shocked, why would I study to do a degree and then graduate and then decide to become a priest? But it was a kind of a late calling, a late vocation. It didn't come about in my early days, but when I was in third level college, I began to discover a call to missionary priesthood. And so I decided to join St. Patrick's, but I didn't join straight away. I took a year out to discern, where I would go. I didn't know where I would go to, but I decided to do come and see programs in different different places. Like I tried the Salesians, I tried the Dawson priesthood, and I went to St. Patrick's Missionary Society to Kiltegan, do a come and see program. And I think after my second program there was the Easter program. I had Michael Rogers, which and Terry Nash were both on the vocation team with Michael Canaan. At that time he left, but Michael Canaan was there too. So after that come and see program at Easter, I decided yes, I would join St. Patrick's Missionary Society. And so in 88, I think around September, I joined the spiritual year in Kiltegan. So I think that's my early story. From then on, it was formation into formation. So it was a change for me, but I adapted quickly to the life in Kiltegan and the spiritual year life. We were kind of famous. We were in the old section called the Proboland. It was demolished while I was there, and they built a thing called Shlian Cree after that. So we were the last group to do our formation in they call it Proboland. It was I think it's in front of the old house in Kiltegan where the CLT used to stay.
I'd say Terry Nash would be happy that you mentioned his name. He'd be chuffed that you've turned out the way you did. Tell me about those formators you had at the time in Kiltegan.
Yeah, we had Seamus O'Neill. He was our formator in philosophy. So after philosophy, I went to theology. I had Sean Deegan and Tomas O'Connor, who were teaching us in the Kimmage Institute for Missionary Institute called in Kimmage. So we all did a degree there, and we lived in Neeson Park for 2 years. We cycled up to Kimmage every day. I think Kimmage Manor. So we had good lectures there. We had one famous lecturer called Vincent McNamara, who was late. Vincent was a great moral theologian, and he really taught us a lot about moral theology. So we're very lucky to have had someone like that in the institute. We also had other lecturers who were very good, who helped us to study theology. I did my first missionary assignment. We called OTP. I did it for 1 year, 2 years. Sorry, I went out to Zambia for my first missionary assignment. So I was appointed to a place called Tauke in Eastern Province in Chapata Diocese. So I went to a priest called Noel Brown, who now works in Kenya in Eldoret Diocese. So I spent 2 years there learning the language, learning the culture, and then I went back to Ireland after 2 years to go into second or third theology. So it was a good experience to see Africa before I was ordained, to know what I would be getting into after ordination. So I really thank God for those 2 years of missionary experience in Eastern Zambia. So I went on to be ordained in 1997 after I completed my studies. I was ordained with Sean Kremen and Cathal Moriarty, who are both working in Africa at the moment. Sean is on the CLT in Kenya, and Cathal Moriarty has just been appointed as a formator in the initial formation in Lusaka. So I'm proud to be on that with that group of those priests. I'm very proud to be with those two. Okay. Because they're all working happily on the missions at the moment.
All right. So before we go into life as a priest, going back to your formation, do you have any story or stories that you still remember, from that time, things that were significant that happened to you in your time in formation?
Yeah, we had very good formators. I would say, Sean Deegan and Tomas O'Connor were excellent formators. They gave us freedom, and they helped us, to mature over and to make a good decision after our formation was over. So I would say that they had a good sense of humor. They really helped us to discover ourselves and to discover what we wanted in life. And I would say cycling to Kimmage was a great, we cycled every day to Kimmage on a bicycle, which was a good experience. It was like, it was environmentally friendly too, because we weren't using the car every day. And even Sean Deegan and Tomas O'Connor would cycle as well up to Kimmage. So they gave a very good example to us too. So I'm very happy to have been in their hands during the formation time.
I cycled a bit in Dublin. I used to cycle from Leeson Park to Blackrock, where the Loretta House was. But I think Kimmage was like maybe 10 times longer than what I did, so that you guys must have been very fit then, We
were fit, at that time we were fit, and it helped us to keep fit as well because we're cycling every day. And it was great, a good way to show, that we're also like have to be realized that we're just students at the time and we didn't have a car. So we had a good, we used to enjoy the cycle together. We'd all cycle up together and cycle home together. So kind of build a good bond between us too.
Amazing. So now we go to your ordination. Do you remember your ordination day and, certain things about it still sticks with you?
Well, I was ordained on the 7th of June, 1997 on a Saturday in St. Patrick's in Kiltegan in the chapel there, the main chapel in St. Patrick's. So it was, it was a great moment for me. I was happy to be with Sean Cremin and Carl Moriarty. As I said, we were together, we were ordained together, the three of us. So had their support as well. And it's always good to have someone with you on the day. So I remember it well. It was a proud moment for my family too, because in those days, I think vocations were going down in Ireland and there wasn't so many people who were joining in those days. So it was kind of, you were going against the tide, Joe, in those days. You're beginning to go against the tide and going against maybe peer pressure too.
What bishop was the celebrant that day?
The bishop was, he worked in Nigeria. You probably know him, the bishop. His name is just gone now.
I have a couple of them. This wouldn't have been Richard Burke at the time.
Richard Burke, yeah, it was Richard Burke.
All right.
Bishop Richard.
I see. All right, okay. So now tell me, how your first few days in your first appointment, how did it go?
The first day, you mean going back to Africa?
Yeah. Yes, Africa, yes.
Yeah, I was sent back to a place called Kitete, which is again in the eastern province of Zambia, Chipata Diocese. So I worked with Martin Holland. I think you know Martin fairly well.
Yes, I do.
We worked together for 2 years in Kitete. So that area is a very good area to learn the language, and I had the language a little bit before I went back, but I really did well. Within about maybe 1 month, I was saying mass in the local language in Zambia. So I got straight into the work there and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed those 2 years thoroughly. And Martin was already there he'd been there 2 years before me. He was ordained in 95. So he had experience of 2 years and he taught me a good view, how to get around the parish, different outstations. So it went very well. I really enjoyed it and I learned a lot in those 2 years as a young priest.
So tell me, when you arrived there, where were our men working? What dioceses were they working at? What numbers did you have at the time?
We had priests like Noel Brown and we had Ned Ryan, Brenda McDonough were working there. Enda Kelly, of course, was working there. We had about roughly 2 priests in 3 parishes. So we had 6 priests working in Chipata Diocese. And we had a very good thing, Joe. We used to meet every Monday for tennis in a place called Chassa, which was a parish not far from Sinda. So we really had some great fun on that court because it was always competitive, I would say. We were challenged. We were really playing our best and we enjoyed the game of tennis every Monday. And sometimes in the evening we'd play cards and we'd spend the day together, have a meal together and then have cards and then go home afterwards back to our parishes. So Chassa was between Tauke and Kitete. So it was a good place to meet because those who were in Kitete would come to Chassa, those in Tauke would come to Chassa. We'd meet there for tennis and on that day off on a Monday. I would just say as well, we had volunteer priests who worked with us from Ireland who were a great help and a great support to the missionary effort. We had priests like Pat Lennon from Ardagh Clonmacnoise. We had Jim Lynch as well from Meath Diocese who did some great work. We had James McKiernan from Ardagh Clonmacnoise and Carl Faulkner and Ber Hogan as well. And Pat, we had a priest as well. Pat, his name has just gone, Joe. Sorry, that name has just gone. But we had some great priests from Ardagh Clonmacnoise who helped us so much in building up the mission church there in Chipata Diocese.
Apart from Chipata, which other dioceses were we at the time when you were there?
We're working in Lusaka as well, Lusaka Archdiocese and Chipata. So in Lusaka, we had a good presence there as well in Lusaka at that time. time. We had priests like Eamon Hayden. We had priests like DJ Breen, who's still there. We had Pat O'Sullivan, who's coming back now to work in Lusaka again. He was a lecturer at that time in St. Dominic's Major Seminary. So we had Jim Brady, of course, and we had Mick Long, and even Frank Conley worked there for a while. And then we had some volunteers who worked with us as well in Lusaka Archdiocese. I think you know that we lost a priest very early on in the mission. One of the priests died. He's buried in Kassisi, and then we lost Father Eugene as well. Father Eugene O'Reilly died. Yeah, so we've had some priests that have worked hard and have passed away. So going to remember them on the Jubilee on the 9th of August. They will be remembered on that day. Yeah.
So when you arrived Zambia, of course you had been there before, and then you went back. Tell somebody who has never been to Zambia before your impression of the people themselves. The people of Zambia.
First president was Kenneth Kaunda. After Kenneth Kaunda, there came in a president called Frederick Chilua. So Frederick Chilua brought in a kind of a free market economy, and he brought in a multi-party democracy into Zambia. So it was a very new thing for Zambia, because under Kenneth Kaunda, it was just one party system, and the economy depended on copper. And the copper prices, as you know, they collapsed during the Kaunda's time, and it meant that the government had to borrow money in order to keep the subsidies going. So I think that time people were very poor, and they were changing over to a democratic system. But I would say in the last 10 years, we've seen a huge change in the country. The economy has improved a lot. We have a good democratic system at the moment in place, and people have voted out. The last president was voted out, and this president at the moment has brought in many things like free education into Zambia. He's also employed 30,000 teachers, and he's really trying to develop an entrepreneurial system where people will take initiative, maybe take risks and set up businesses in Zambia. He's also encouraging people to come in to invest in Zambia. It's a lovely country, Zambia. It's a very lovely climate. People are very friendly there and very welcoming in Zambia. So when I came, like in my early days, I got a great welcome in Zambia. You can't imagine, it's unique. I think that Zambian welcome is unique. They really make you feel at home, and they appreciate our work that we do in Zambia. They really look after us there. They're so kind and warm-hearted people. So that's the reason I'm still here today, is because of the Zambian people.
I will be doing a program called My Favorite Things. It's for missionaries who, when they go back home to either Ireland or wherever it is you're from, the things they miss the most, in their mission territory. So could I ask you maybe one or two things that you always miss when you go back home to Limerick, in Zambia, Yeah,
the first thing would be the liturgy.
All right.
The Mass is very much, the singing is very special in Zambia. And people in Zambia, they love singing. Basically, the choirs, there's so many choirs, and they're quite gifted when it comes to singing hymns and celebrating liturgy. They're very expressive as well. They like to dance. They like to pray. They're very free when they're praying. And they have great faith as well in God, who gives them the gift of life. So I think when you go home, you find that our church in Ireland has come from a priest. Very, very, many priests in Ireland were there, and the priests tended to control everything in the church in Ireland. So the problem is nowadays there's less priests in Ireland, but the laity have never been formed. They've never been given empowered. So you find that there's a kind of a laity that are sleeping in Ireland. They don't go to church, or maybe go to church, but they're not expressing their faith in a way the Zambian people can do it. And I think Zambia, the church in Zambia, came out with the lay people. Basically, the lay people who run the church in Zambia. We have a much better system of parish councils, church councils, and Christian communities there, which are vibrant and working well. So you find on Sunday, I can't say Mass in all the outstations. So the lay people, they organize their own liturgy, they're singing, and they're preaching. We have prayer leaders who preach on Sunday in the outstations when there's no Mass. So I think that's the difference, Joe. We don't have that system in Ireland. We just have Mass in Ireland. We don't have outstations. We don't have laity leading liturgies. So I think it'll come soon, but it hasn't come yet. But it's getting there. Like, we're coming closer to that day in Ireland when we won't have enough priests to service all the churches.
What is your impression of the diocesan priests in Zambia as a whole? From your point of view, how are they coping with their work?
Yeah, we have a very good relationship. I'm also a dean of the deanery here in Lusaka, which means that I look after as a dean. I look after for meetings, that is 11 parishes. So we meet 4 times a year as priests and as pastoral leaders as well, which means that all the leaders from the outstation, all the leaders from the parishes, they come together and we share how things are going in our parishes, and we share ideas, we discuss, and we plan ahead together. So I think this is the diocesan priests are very much part of that, and they're doing very well in Zambia. They're really doing a great job in the parishes that they're in. And there's a good relationship between the missionaries and the diocesan priests in Lusaka.
If I asked you to think of what projects have the St. Patrick's missionaries invested in Zambia in your time there, apart from the evangelization, but I sense that in Zambia, we have had some other kind of projects, building the kingdom. Yeah. Could you mention a few of them?
Yeah, we have projects in Zambia. I don't know if you know this, but we do a thing called small churches, small village churches in Zambia. So every year, roughly, every parish builds at least one outstation church or a small village church. So we normally help with the materials, and the labor usually comes from the small Christian communities or from the outstation. They provide the labor, we provide the materials needed for the church. And so we've really left our mark. When you look over the years, Joe, we've built a number of very good churches in Zambia, and we've helped to prepare the numbers are going up, the number of Catholics is growing. I don't know if you know that I was in a parish called Good Shepherd Momba. I was there in Good Shepherd Momba. Today, it's 5 parishes, divided into 5 parishes. That's over the last 5 years. We now have 5 parishes where there was 1 parish before. So I would say that we have built a number of very good churches there, good structures, and we have roofed them. We have put on Malata roofing, which is iron sheets on the roof. So these are long-lasting and they'll stand for many years to come. So it means that people have a place to pray when they gather on Sunday. We also are involved in, I'm also involved in a water project here. So I drill water at schools in Zambia, all over Zambia. So last year we drilled, we did 80 schools. So we brought water to 80 schools. Now some of those schools that we went to already had boreholes. They already had boreholes there, but we changed. We did a refurbishment, which meant that we took up the old pipes that were down there. They were rusted. Some of them were very badly rusted, and the steel rods were rusted too. So we replaced that with PVC piping, new PVC piping, new stainless steel rods, and we put a pump at the bottom of the borehole. And then we put an apron on the borehole, and so now water is flowing in those boreholes. And we reckon that will continue for 20 years into the future because of the good piping that's there. So this is called like preventative maintenance. We don't really wait till the thing collapses or the thing breaks down. We fix it before, and that means that school will have water for all the kids who are going to school there. We're also working on solar power. We did a project in St. Edmund's Secondary School there. We solar powered the whole school, and with our friends from Ireland. My niece who lives in Limerick, she did an online walk from Limerick to Zambia with her friends. So every day they walked kilometers, and they gathered together all the kilometers until they reached Zambia. So it took them about 3 months to do it. And in those 3 months, they raised €24,000. And that money helped to solar power the whole school of St. Edmund's Secondary School, which has 300 kids, 300 school children there, about 150 boys, 150 girls. So this project has really helped them to help the education sector, because now the children, they can learn at night, they can study, they have a projector. We bought them a projector recently. We bought them a PA system recently. So we're really helping the school to develop and to move into the modern day, the modern era.
So they're just, So you were saying something, man?
Yeah, I mean, we do other projects, like we have other projects too, like that we do. I'm also building a preschool at the moment. We will look after the smaller children, and we're solar powering that school with help from St. Patrick's Missionary Society. I'm also putting down a solar pump, which means I will use 8 panels to pump water into a tank, and that will go into an ablution block for the children, small children. So it'll mean that sanitation will be quite good. We'll have running water there, clean water. It'll be drinking water because it's coming from a borehole, and the toilets can flush there. So it's a step up from the pit latrine, which is it's okay, but it's not as sanitary as the flush toilet. So we're also building teachers' houses there, and building a house for 2 teachers. So we'll have 2 classrooms for the small kids. So I thank St. Patrick's for helping to give us some help to finish the solar powering there, and to put up the pump as well for the project.
So, Martin, sorry, I didn't tell you that I would talk about COVID, but it came into my mind now, and it did affect everybody. What were the most difficult parts of the pandemic for you and your ministry?
Yeah, we had to change our whole ministry in terms of our contact with the people was reduced. We couldn't shake hands during the COVID, and we had to wear masks. Most time we're saying masks. Even at one time we couldn't say public masses during the COVID time. So the people really suffered because they weren't getting that daily nourishment of daily mass. And even the Sunday mass wasn't allowed for a time. So we also had a very, Father PJ Breen got very sick during COVID. So he was rushed to hospital and failing to breathe. So he was put on a machine to help him to breathe. So he remained on that machine and pumping oxygen into him Zambia for over 1 week. So it was a real time it was a real difficult time for us as missionaries, because one of our priests there was almost on a life support machine there. He couldn't breathe without that machine. And we worried about him, would he make it? But thank God, Father PJ pulled through and came back. And today is working as a missionary in Momba, a very happy missionary. And even after the COVID, he was thinking of giving up his missionary life, go back to Ireland to retire. But lucky enough, we encouraged him to wait until he got his strength back and then make a decision. So his decision was to stay in Zambia, to continue to work in Zambia. So we're grateful to God for giving us the strength to cope during those times and to help our society. We had great support. We support each other a lot too, and that helped us to get through those difficult days of COVID.
So now when you look back in your time, it's a long time in Zambia, what moment kind of stands out for you? I mean, it could be a happy moment, but also could have been a sad or dangerous moment. What moment is it that you won't forget? If you don't mind sharing one or two with us.
Yeah, I think, Joe, when I look back, I'd say that the baptisms at Easter, for me, are a great moment for a priest, because, we prepare our catechumens for 3 years. We use the RCA system. The RCA is a rite of Christian initiation of adults. So they do their training, they do their Mapun Zero, as we call it in this language here. It's like instructions. So they do that for 3 years. And then after those 3 years, we get them ready for the great day, great night, Easter Vigil night, when they're baptized. So I've had some marvelous, baptisms over the years, and they stand out. And I remember, I can share with you one moment where there was a girl who was, she had a problem with, we'll call it like spiritual oppression. Maybe she had some bad spirits that were there. So we tried to pray over her with the charismatics in Ketete. We tried to pray over her. And no matter how much we prayed, those spirits would not come out. She couldn't be delivered. So then on the baptism night, I was worried what would happen when she came forward for baptism. Was she ready for baptism? How would the baptism affect those spirits that are there? So when she came up for a baptism, I took the water, the blessed water, and I baptized her in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And she collapsed right there on the spot. So the women were there to take her and to hold her. Now, when she came back for confirmation, to receive the oil of confirmation on her forehead, she was confirmed, and she never fell. And I asked her afterwards, what happened? She said, Father, that baptism, I was totally delivered through that baptism that I got. So it was like I was born again. All my past was wiped away. I began a new chapter in my life. So I really realized how significant a baptism is, especially for an adult. It's a great moment in our lives. It's a very joyful moment, a great celebration. And those Easter ceremonies have been great moments of celebration for me as a priest. And I can never forget them as a priest.
Any moments that made you sad or something, Martin, if you don't mind?
I can tell you like that. It's not all plain sailing, but, I had a moment in Malawi when I went to Malawi with my two sisters. They flew over 98. So we went to Lake Malawi and we went to stay at a lodge in Lake Malawi. So that night we had an attack by, it was like they came in at night and one robber or one thief had a gun, the other had a machete, and the other had a bag. And they were after money. So lucky enough, I was given money by my sister, a gift from Ireland. Could have been about 120 sterling. There's an envelope beside my bed. So they actually kicked my door down and they said, they hit me with a gun. I was hit on the back with a gun and they said, we want money. So lucky enough, I had that envelope there beside me and I gave them the envelope with the money that hadn't even opened. So I gave them the envelope and they opened the envelope. They saw the money. And that my life was spared because they said, you've given us something, so go out. So I went out into a circle. I found my sister there. We're very, upset because of this was a traumatic thing for them to be robbed at night in the dark. So we prayed together in a circle together. And the owner of the lodge had two lovely children. So his wife was holding the children very close. And the thief, the robbers, took the children off the mother and said, if you don't give us money, we're going to kill the children. So I intervened at that moment and I told him, I'm a priest. I'm working in Zambia. I'm helping poor people. So please don't harm those children. So lucky enough to give the children back to the mother. Then I said, take my pickup. There's the keys. Take my pickup and go. And lucky enough, he took the pickup. He got into the car, started the pickup, and off they went. So afterwards, I realized that we were protected somehow from nobody got killed that night. We were really traumatized, but we kept together, united, and we prayed very hard together. And that the following night or the following day, Frank Taylor drove us. He came down and collected us and drove us back to Lilongwe. And Frank Taylor himself had also been shot in Lusaka at one moment by a thief in Lusaka. And the bullet went right through Frank's shoulder and missed his heart. So Frank's life was saved by an angel. And so that night we were also saved by some angel came down and intervened. and protected us that night. So I can see that the power of prayer, the power of God working in our lives can protect us, when we pray. So I really believe that we can go through a bad experience, but you can learn something from that. You can learn something good from that.
Thank you very much, Martin. And well, sorry for having to make you relive that moment, but it was good to hear that and that testimony you've given us. Thank you very much. All right. So Martin, the next question I would like to ask you is about the internationalization program. Eventually the SPS decided that it would take students from Africa. Tell me how that process was for you, those of you in Zambia.
Yeah, we in Zambia, we embraced that process wholeheartedly. We began our formation house in Lusaka, which is doing very well. It's still there today, and we are recruiting young Zambian, young Malawian, and young Kenyan men to join us on the missionary formation. So with the hope that they will become priests one day. So I think we saw the advantages of the internationalization. At that time, the vocations were going down in Ireland. We could see that our priests were getting elderly, and we knew that.
Okay. So now, Martin, if you compare how things were then and now, how would you say the Celtican missionaries are faring now? It's a long time since we were there in the 50s, 50 years. How would you say we are faring now in comparison to the first time we arrived?
You mean
the St. Patrick's missionaries? Yeah, the Celticans.
I think things have changed a lot in those years. Obviously, we're getting a lot of support, much more support from St. Patrick's these days. We, as I said, projects are sponsored by St. Patrick's. We have environmental projects called Laudato Si, which will look at how to protect the environment today. As we look around, we see the world is heating up. We see global warming, and we realize that we can't just sit around and do nothing. We have to do our part as well, protect the planet. So we're doing our small part in Zambia. We're trying to look at ways of reducing carbon emissions. We put up all our houses have solar panels, so that we can reduce on electricity. And the electricity in Zambia is coming from water. It comes from the water in the Zambezi River. It's generated at Kariba. A lot of it is generated at Kariba. So it is clean energy, but still we have to cut down on the electricity by generating our own electricity using solar. So I would say that today we get much more help from St. Patrick's. As I said, we have a small village. We help to build small villages, village churches. We look after a lot of sick people who are still suffering in Zambia due to the lack of medicine. We help them, in terms of going to hospital. We look after people with HIV/AIDS today, still there. Like today, HIV/AIDS hasn't gone away; it's still there, and it's difficult to cope with it because they need special medicine and special diet. So we do help people with HIV/AIDS today, even today. Then we have another grant called Apostolic Grant, which helps us to buy things for the church. We can send our catechists, on courses, our laity on courses, and we have a catechist fund as well, which also helps to. We employ a catechist as a volunteer here in the parish. So that catechist does a lot of work in the parish here. So it takes the pressure off the priest. The priest doesn't have to do everything if there is a lay catechist there. So I think this support is really helping us as missionaries. And we're doing a lot of good work with those resources that were given from St. Patrick's.
What would your prayer be for the missionaries yet to be ordained, or those who are still just beginning their missionary work? What would be your prayer or wish for them?
Yeah, we pray that they'll have a zeal for the missionary work. We're very lucky that we have the first missionary assignment program. So the students, they go to a parish for 1 year and they work for 1 year in our different parishes. And during that year, they engage in a lot of pastoral outlets. For example, I have a student from Kenya at the moment who's teaching in a secondary school here Monday to Friday. On Saturday and Sunday, he goes out to do pastoral work. On Sunday, he does a prayer service in the outstation. So he's learned the language after a short time. He had to learn Nyanja, and he's speaking fairly good Nyanja at the moment, and he's able to conduct a prayer service at the outstation. So I've seen that he's very committed to the work, and if that spirit is there in him, we pray that it will continue after ordination, that it will continue that same spirit that he's showing now as a student. So that's my prayer for the students who will be ordained, that they will continue like what Patrick Whitney did. Patrick Whitney left Ireland and went to Nigeria in those early days in 1930s, and he sacrificed a lot because it wasn't easy to travel those days. You had to travel by boat, and it took a long time, and there was a lot more malaria, I think, in those early days of the missionaries, and they probably got sick much more often, and they couldn't go home as often as we do. So I admired that spirit of sacrifice that the early missionaries, our early missionary priests had. So I kind of prayed that they would have that spirit of sacrifice will be there today in our young missionary priests.
Just on behalf of the people, of our men who have been there, all these 50 years, you have done 25. What would you like to say to the people of Zambia?
Yeah, we'd say we thank the people of Zambia for welcoming us. I had a letter from Peter Finnegan just a few days ago, and he told me that he came in 1973 to Lusaka, which is 50 years ago, and the parish they were given was Roma Parish. At that time, the Jesuits were there. So Archbishop Malingo, he asked the Jesuits to let the St. Patrick's Missionary take over a very good parish in Lusaka called Roma Parish. And our priests stayed there for many, many years in that parish, and we did great work in that parish. So I thank the Zambian people for welcoming us to their country, and also the hospitality that they showed us, and their faith too. They have a strong faith in God, and the young people today are very vibrant in this country. We have a very good youth movement here, and the young people, they come to church nearly every Sunday. We have a lot of young people. They lead liturgies. They're vibrant. They're able to express themselves today. So I thank God for a growing young population in Zambia. I don't know if you know this, but Zambia has one of the largest young population in the world, because this is our future. Like, the young people of Zambia will be the ones who will bring this country to a new level, and they're being schooled. As I said, many schools are there. There's new colleges going up in Zambia, so they're getting third level education, and we're going to produce good nurses. We're producing good teachers. We're producing even good doctors. So this country is self-sufficient and is doing very well. So I thank the Zambian people for their courage and for their strong faith that they have in Jesus Christ, which I think is the most important thing that we have, because Zambia declared in the Constitution, Zambia is a Christian nation, and that's been enshrined in the Constitution of Zambia, which I'm very proud to see that. In other countries in the world, they have removed God from their Constitution. So Zambia have remained and have kept this country is a Christian nation. So that, to me, I'm proud of that, like, to be in a Christian nation, because we are priests working with people who are very appreciative of what we do, and that makes our task much easier too.
My very last question now is about the benefactors. I worked with the St. Patrick's benefactors, for a few years in England. They will be listening to this interview. So what would you like to say to them?
Yeah, I would say that, like, we thank them for their generosity. The donations they give to St. Patrick's Missionary Society are used here on the ground, on grass level, on the grass level here. We're working with people every day here. As I said, I met this man recently in Ireland, and he told me that his daughter died of cancer at the age of 30 in Ireland. And before she died, she asked her dad a favor. And the favor was for him to build a church in her honor after she died. So she did die. And today he came back. He flew out to Zambia. He flew out to my parish here in St. Patrick's, Mcgowan. And he said, I want to build a preschool in memory of my daughter. So today I've built that preschool, and it's called Alicia's Preschool. So, to me, that's the generosity of the Irish people. They're so generous. The English people are so generous. They want us to do good work here in Zambia, and they're ready to donate because they know that the money is going to good use, and it's going to help the people of Zambia. And education, as you know, is one of the major sectors here. If we can educate the people, they will have a better future in Zambia. So I thank our donors, I thank our benefactors, and we pray for them every day. As you know, Joe, in our evening prayer, morning prayer, we pray for them every single day.
Yeah, Martin, you made me emotional there with that last story, and it's very, very. May that lady rest in peace. Okay, so thank you, Martin. We've come to the end of our interview, and I'd like to wish you well as we celebrate the anniversary of our men being there, and to thank you for the work that you do. You were one of the men who gave us a lot of a good example. You were one of the younger priests when we were joining ourselves, and it was very good to see you out there, and you've really encouraged us. So, Martin, thank you very much for this interview, and thanks for the stories you've told us. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Happy anniversary once again. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
We thank Father Martin Mcgowan for granting us this interview, and we wish him well. Join us next time for other SPMS media interviews. Joe.Archibong for SPMS Media.